Susan Bradley for CSO Online. So the other day was electronic waste day at my office, and quite frankly, I used the good old-fashioned hammer to destroy the hard drives. But obviously that doesn't scale in all locations. Over 10 years ago, Microsoft listed the 10 laws of security, and law number 3 states that if the bad guy has unrestricted physical access to your computer, it's not your computer anymore. These days, it's also the case of if they have unrestricted access to those hard drives. So make sure when you're getting rid of any electronic information, electronic equipment, computers, scanners, printers, phones, think of all of the digital information that's stored on those and how you can destroy that electronic information before you recycle it or before you get rid of it. The National Institute of Standards and Technology actually has a guidance in NIST Special Publication 800-88 that talks about what you need to do. You have a couple of options. There are some third-party tools you can use to erase and sanitize drives. Now in this sample, I'm actually just erasing the recycle bin. And there's some sensitive information there that I don't want out. We can choose what kind of level of drive wipe we can do. We can do US Army, and we want to even shred the previous versions. In the era of BitLocker and self-encrypting hard drives, knowing when the data is added to the hard drives, either before the encryption or after, means you can make a possible change to make the entire drive unreadable. In the case of self-encrypting hard drives, you can change the existing password, that is the data encryption key, and the data is no longer readable. This process is called crypto erase, and it's been approved by ISO and NIST as an acceptable data sanitation method. In order to use it, you make sure you test the process to ensure that you can't recover that data. Now note there's been some recent changes regarding BitLocker and how it handles encryption. Now back in November of last year, there was some information about recent researchers that did some research into self-encrypting hard drives. The researchers at Rabode University found some solid-state drives that allowed an attacker to bypass the disk encryption feature and access the local data without even knowing the user-chosen disk encryption password. There were certain models more in the consumer space that provided self-encrypting. They found that these drives were actually able to be compromised. Now, back when this issue came out in November, Microsoft actually recommended that you configure a group policy to force software encryption, unencrypt the drives, re-encrypt them to be safe. So now they've done one better. In the recent September updates, in the late September, what's called the D-Week updates for Windows 10, specifically for Windows 10 1803, 1709, 1703, and 1607, they've actually changed how BitLocker is handled. As noted right down here, changes the default setting for BitLocker when encrypting a self-encrypting hard drive. Now the default is to use software encryption for newly encrypted drives. If you have an existing drive that's using the self-encrypting hard drive method, it won't change it. But notice this is going forward. If you have any brand new self-encrypting hard drive from the manufacturer, BitLocker will instead use software. So how do you know what kind of encryption you have, whether hardware or software? Well, if you put in the command from a command prompt, manage-bde.exe-status, you can see right here where it says encryption method. If that has AES or some other listing there, that means it's software based. If the word hardware is there, it specifically then is tied to the hardware. So again, look for encryption method, and if it just says AES, then you know it's software method, not hardware. The specific group policy you're looking for is under Computer Configuration, Policies, Administrative Templates, Windows Components, BitLocker Drive Encryption. Under the setting of Configure Use of Hardware-Based Encryption for Fixed Data Drives, you want to choose the setting to Disable. When it's set to Disable, BitLocker cannot use hardware-based encryption and instead uses software-based encryption by default. Unfortunately, the only way to move data from a potentially hackable hardware drive encryption method to the more protected software base is to unencrypt it, change the methodology that you used, re-encrypt it again. Obviously, you want to plan on the proper encryption settings going forward, or test your SSD drives to make sure that they're doing the proper encryption. But what happens when you move to the cloud and you no longer have control of that physical location? You then have to rely on statements, agreements, and contracts. For example, in the Microsoft privacy statement, they note in their privacy section that if you terminate a cloud subscription, Microsoft will store the customer data in a limited function account for 90 days to give you time to extract the data or renew your subscription. During this period, you'll get several warnings from Microsoft indicating that your data is about to be removed. After the retention period, Microsoft will disable the account and delete the customer data, including any backup copies. Microsoft in their own data centers follows the NIST guidelines for data destruction. What about Azure? What if we do a virtual machine in Azure? Remember, there's lots more things to virtual machines than just the subscription itself. So you want to make sure that you go up to the Azure portal, not only remove the virtual machine, but also think about the other things that you've left behind. For example, network interfaces, public IP addresses, storage blobs, operating system disks, data disks. So you want to make sure you go through all of the places where you've stored data up in the cloud and make sure those are deleted as well. Always take the time to review where your data is located, remember where it's stored, and make sure you delete all those locations. As always, don't forget to sign up for Tech Talk from IDG. Look for us on the YouTube channel. Until next time, this is Susan Bradley for CSO Online.